Good morning, Rays. OKJ here on a Monday. My hubby should have left Florida this morning to travel back to Tennessee, but the races got rained out over the weekend, so he's got 2 races that he has to go to today. So instead of leaving after the Daytona 500 and coming back to Tennessee, he's going to stay another night and leave out in the morning. So I have been alone all week, but not really, huh? I've been hanging out with all of y'all. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Hello, Donna Donald and Vix Tex and Cindy Arnold and Mark McGarry. Thank you for the comments that you left on the community wall, Mr. M. K-Tech. And let's see, what is it here? As for information, I'm curious as to the FBI sourced Alex text email now provided to Woods and Pryor. It's sourced from Lori's trial in Arizona. Yes, I had talked to y'all about that, Mr. M. I think it's 2, maybe one or 2 live streams ago. I think it was last time, though, that I came to y'all in the evening time. I think it was on a Friday. I didn't get up for coffee, and so later on that evening, I saw that drop in the case file. And so I kind of, got with everyone and all that good stuff. Y'all, I haven't been sleeping good at all. This last week, without Wayne being here, it's been hard on me. I've been making the best of it in terms of junk food and watching movies and getting some chores done, but nonetheless, y'all, it's just not the same without my hubby here. But back to what you were talking about, Mr. M. That is interesting in that the state is obviously not sure what John Pryor is speaking of. They can only guess because John Pryor is constantly trying to get a continuance or whatever he can do. But as I had told the Rays when we discussed this, there is a portion of that FBI report of Homer J. Maximus, which is Alex Cox's Gmail account. And I do believe, this is just a theory, that it's going to show more of the conspiracy aspects between Chad and Alex. It didn't have to really be brought out in Lori's trial. And then that got me thinking about, well, did they have to show their entire hand of what they originally was going to do, and that was when Lori and Chad would have been sitting at the table together being tried together? Did they keep some back for Chad's trial? And I believe so. And so I thought, well, let me go back through Lori's trial there and see the areas that there are questions that the state didn't bring forth. The only conspiracy type of evidence that was brought up in Lori's trial as it related to Chad and Lori was the affair, how they interacted with each other on this Lolly Time account and other text messages and all of this and that. But they never homed in, y'all. They never homed in on Alex and Chad's whole relationship as it pertains to their communications. Good morning, 1979 ACR. Good morning, Just Me, Grammy B, Great Day Mom, Liza Joe, Bonnie Baker, Madonna. Hello there. Hadn't seen you on here in a while, Madonna. Good morning. Beach Lady, Michelle Flanagan. Which reminds me, I'm seeing all these familiar names, and I thank goodness for that. But as many of y'all know, we've been getting a lot of trolls lately. There's this little part of me that's like, I'm just going to go with the pre-records. I'm tired of messing with the trolls. But that wouldn't be fair to y'all and to me. I mean, we love to get together, and so I'm going to do everything I can not to feed the trolls if they come on here. Hello, Diane Renee McDonald. Donna Donald says, I hope we learn more about Chad and Alex's relationship. Yes. You know, when we heard about things that we'd never heard of between Lori and Chad in Lori's trial, it floored me. And so you think about the twisted nature of Alex Cox's mind and also the chinster there, you just don't know. But anyway, so I was on Difficult Research last night chatting with a lot of y'all, and I had let everyone know that this morning we were going to talk about this couple that were friends with Chad Daybell, this Alice and Todd Gilbert. And I remember Donna Donald's basically saying positive thoughts about them and all of that. And, you know, folks, when I think about the state's witnesses in Lori's trial, a lot of them we all know, you know, Zulema, Melanie Gibb, you know, the bunch there. They're exactly the type of people that there's no way that I give credibility to. And then it's almost like, well, how can I mean, anyone that was hanging out with Chad and Lori at any time, even if it was just being a good neighbor or something like that, you've got to wonder, how much did they really know? How much were they really talking to one another about different stuff? In other words, what I want to say when it comes to Alice and Todd Gilbert, I don't know how much their testimony was critiqued, but we do know that Melanie Gibb and Zulema and David Warwick and the rest there, Audrey Bartario and stuff, do y'all really think that they told the jury everything they knew? I don't think so. And I don't think Alice and Todd Gilbert did either. And I'm not saying they're nefarious. I just think that, you know, when they got on the stand and talked about Chad coming over and everything was so quick with bringing Lori over there and all this and that, you know, it's almost like, well, how can you just go from them walking in the door and not having any background or anything? It's almost like, yes, we know this Alice Gilbert lady said she was shocked and all this and that, but yet they kept hanging out. It's just some pieces of that puzzle just don't seem to fall right for me. Thank you, VixTex. I'll try to ignore the trolls. People get comfortable and text things that show their colors, says Donna Donald. That's a great point, Donna. You've always been so articulate about things. Always have such good comments. So back to Alice and Todd Gilbert. Okay, Jay, when I go to research something, the first thing I want to do is kind of give myself, you know, what are the questions? What questions do I want answered? You know, you can't just go into research and just whatever you find out, right? You've got to have a purpose. Well, this, at least for me. So it was almost like, okay, is it a question or not? Wonder why Chad and Lori didn't tell the Gilberts about the end of the world, if it's so real, right? Or zombies, or light and dark entities, or their different life probations and all of that. And it's my understanding that Todd Gilbert said, you know, he'd read some of Chad's books and that it was, you know, fiction writing, but Chad had let him know that this is because of my spiritual dreams and visions and all that crap. Which is it? Is it fiction, or is it this Todd Gilbert guy, was it his understanding that Chad put his arm on his shoulder and said, I've wrote these books knowing that my dreams and visions are real, Todd, but, you know, because the way the church is, I've just got to, you know, I got to blanket it in fiction. We don't know. You know, maybe what Todd and Alice Gilbert said was, you know, obviously it's enough for their testimony, because Lori will never see another day outside of a prison cell. Well, the bottom line is that when you look at that relationship between the Gilberts and Chad, how is it that he could just show up and go sit down at the table and eat cookies and all that without there's some kind of real relationship that has been set up? Theory being that I think that Chad probably hung out at some points with this Todd Gilbert guy. Maybe he did not come 100% clean on the stand about things. I'm not saying he's a liar or anything like that. I just think that his testimony was kind of critiqued a little bit. But I do believe that they knew more. And maybe this more is more about things that they are not supposed to talk about in their church. And I do believe that when you look at the overall picture of the witnesses in Lori's trial that were in that religion, that were either in that little cult or people that were, I don't know anything about that, but I'm just sitting on the fence, says Todd Gilbert. You got to wonder if they're trying to protect what they believe or know. I mean, we all know that there are certain parts of their religion where it's supposed to say sacred, and more power to them. But we're talking about murder here, and we're talking about conspiracy to commit murder. And I just feel like the state of Idaho kind of protected that aspect. How many times since Lori's trial did we say they put kid gloves on those witnesses and all of that? So I looked at Albert Gilbert and Todd Gilbert's testimonies, and I lined them up together, and a lot of it did line up in terms of when Chad and Lori came over, and there was all these things that lined up about their testimony. And Alice Gilbert was more forthcoming about other aspects, and I want to kind of go through that, and then we'll end on something I think is very interesting. Y'all know how I roll when I look at victim impact statements. I know that the night that we had the burning of the effigy of the hussy there, I had made the statement that Samantha Gwilliam had an excellent impact statement, and we never really went over that. What can we find in that? Cindy Arnold says, one of my questions is how and why the first person to say, let's kill these people. I mean, they didn't even know each other that long. It just baffles me. Well, Cindy Arnold, there's a lot about this case where there are these questions, and I think the reason we're not getting the answers is it goes back again to the evidence in Lori's trial, that a lot of it will be in Chad's trial, and the state's case in chief is their burden to prove, and they're going to leave out things that would answer a lot of these questions for us. But with that saying, does anyone believe that John Pryor's not going to be able to extract some of the things that the state does not want said to the jurors there? I mean, the state's going to have to be very careful with how they directly examine these witnesses, because these doors can open. And John Pryor will be pouncing. I know it. Hello, Gina V. Clint Carball. Let's see. Remember also Chad was predicting the end of the earth, the full-on doomsday mashup. Right, Mr. M? Again, we've talked about this so many times. I'm not trying to beat a dead horse. What I'm saying is really that thing that Candace and my friend Jenny was talking about. And that is, as if they really believed this stuff, they should have been sharing it, or when they got arrested, they should have went right into it. Oh, I believe this or I believe that, but it was all just deceit and lies and a blanket, basically. A blanket of evil. So I want to go into this. Y'all know I don't have no rhyme or reason for what I do in terms of how I present it and demonstrate what it is that I've been doing now for 4 years? Y'all are going to have to excuse old KJ, because the bottom line is that it's not going to be enough until that SOB is either on death row or life in prison for me. So here we go. Alice Gilbert, as many of y'all recall, and maybe some of y'all didn't follow it so closely, she was a very good church friend of Tammy. She was the Relief Society president in their church. She gets on the stand, and of course y'all know all we had was the sketches, so we didn't get to see what she actually looked like, her facial expressions or anything like that. But overall, I believe this woman really cared deeply for Tammy, was friends at church with her. They did a lot of activities together. She explained Tammy really helped in so many areas to keep things simple, and just a little bit about how Tammy was and how what she saw observation-wise with the way Chad and Tammy were toward one another. So it all really comes down to this one thing that I didn't think of before. And she starts testifying about 4 days after the funeral that Chad, and them got together and all of this stuff. And after Tammy's death, October 26th, they decided they were going to reach out to Chad Daybell after the funeral and the memorial. Her and her husband Todd wanted to be good neighbors. They wanted to bring him pizza because he decided he was going to move out of the house to go stay with a friend at their apartment on Pioneer Road. In other words, he should have just been upfront with them and said, I'm going to, I've murdered my wife. Now I want to go stay with my concubine, But anyway, so he immediately told him, no, I'll come see you. And so he went to visit him. And just wrapping my head around this, we're talking, less than a week, he's telling Todd and Alice Gilbert that he's met another woman. And he said he met her at a conference in St. George in October of 2018. And so I'm thinking, in the way that I think of things, I think about, okay, I just picture Chad coming in their house, maybe giving each other a hug. They're sitting down. He says he's met this woman and all this and that. Was this something that Alice and Todd Gilbert was like, oh, well, he initially just platonically or just by chance met her back last October of 2018, and now they kind of met, but nothing's going on and all of that. He said he met her at this at this conference, and the thing that really bugs me about the whole testimony of Todd and Alex Gilbert is the fastness of what he was telling them and how quickly it happened. How, in terms of their testimony, it really wasn't like they thought that anything was really wrong. They said it was shocking and all that. But this makes me think, do they think that something can happen like that? Because, at some point he's telling Todd that this is a second segment of his life and all this other stuff. And I'm like, is this something that goes on more than we realize? Because I'm going to tell you, if from the moment that someone would do something like that, if I was friends with a woman out here and she died, and less than a week later, her husband's coming over to say he's met a woman, that would be the end for me. I wouldn't judge him, but I'd be like, something's wrong with him. Something's wrong. And I wouldn't be continuing to try to be around them and all this other stuff. And what kind of friend would I be to some guy that would come out here to tell me that, who also wants me to put my house up for bond for this hussy? These people had to have been kind of close with y'all. I just don't see him out of nowhere. Hey, would y'all put your house up so that I can get my hussy out of jail? But this Alice Gilbert on the stand talked about, he discussed his future plans. Well, folks, did Chad Daybell really discuss his future plans with Alice and Todd there? Maybe he told them, and we don't know it. These are just theories that it was the end of the world, but they're saying that he told them that his future plans was he was going to go to Hawaii, and he was going to live in Hawaii, and he was going to write a book. When he brought Lori over to their house, they talked about that they would eventually get married, but didn't know when that would be. They said they were going to wait for Christ to tell them when to get married. And so I thought, wait a minute. These people all this time are saying that all these dark canes and zombies and it's going to be the end of the world. And yet they want to tell these neighbors that he's going to be write a book in Hawaii and that they would eventually get married. Well, at the time that they told them that they would eventually get married, they already knew they were getting married, because on the date that Lori and Chad went over to the Gilberts, the malachite rings were already ordered, the wedding dress, all this stupid stuff that Zulima's talking about. Oh, I see your bride in white, she says to Chad on the text message and stuff. So they're telling the Gilberts, hey, we'll eventually get married when Christ says to get married. And then, obviously, the very next time they come over there, they're showing them wedding pictures. They mentioned they wanted to take the kids to Disneyland. How many people who wants to give out this crock of crap that it's going to be the end of the world, there's all these earthquakes that I guess Zulima's going to make, and that the world's going to end, the end of the world and all that. But hey, let's go ahead and take the kids to Disneyland. And they were not talking about JJ and Tolly. They were talking about Chad's kids. So not only is his future plans go to Disney World, write a book in Hawaii, we'll eventually get married, not one damn word to Alice or Todd there that, hey, we lived in multiple probations. And Lori and I were James and Elena and Raphael and Lily and all this crap. But what's interesting about Alice Gilbert's testimony in Lori's trial is that he went and visited the Gilberts in February, y'all. February of 2019, and told the Gilberts that he saw a vision that Tammy was not going to live past 50. Okay, so let's stop. When he visits the Gilberts after Tammy's death, he tells them he's met another woman. He tells them he met her October of 2018 at a conference. They know already that he told them back in February of 2019 that Tammy wasn't going to live past 50. And so this all should have clicked for them when you add that information together. Because if they knew all the way back since February of 2019 that Chad had this vision that Tammy was going to die before 50, do you think that was the only time that Chad ever talked to them about Tammy dying before she's 50? He only told the Gilberts that one time in February of 2019? I don't know, y'all. I don't know, but I do know this. They've got the information now that Chad said he met a woman. Now that Chad brought Lori over there, they said nothing at all about any kind of end-of-world stuff. These Gilberts are not making sense in some areas. Not to say they're nefarious. I'm just saying this is the way that the state has framed their questions in Lori's trial. It just doesn't make sense. So at some point after Lori was arrested in Hawaii, Chad asked if he could move in with these Gilberts. And, I don't know about y'all, but, I know people out here in the world, and I've got friends and neighbors and associates and people that I know, and unless I'm very close with someone, I can't imagine someone saying, hey, can I move in with you? I can't see that unless I have some kind of real relationship. I couldn't see someone who I just kind of knew asked me to move in, right? And of course, they told Chad that, no, you can't move in. And I think they gave the excuse that their daughter would be coming home and that wouldn't look right or something to that effect. But they told him no, he couldn't move in. And I guess coming back from Hawaii, knowing that his hussy's in jail, why can't he go back to the house? Why can't he just go back to his kids? Why is it now, and it's been bared out in testimony, from the day that Tammy was put, they called the coroner and she's been put in a funeral and memorial, that there's evidence out there that Chad just absolutely distanced himself from his kids. He wanted to take them to Disney World, but even Emma said that, my dad don't want nothing to do with us anymore. So, all of that is kind of strange that he wanted to move in with the Gilberts, because he could have, why couldn't he? He had Tammy's blood money, right? He had her blood money. He could have rented an apartment. Can he not get someone in Rexburg, Idaho? Or hell, if he hadn't got nowhere he wants to be, in terms of going back to the house where those children's bodies were out in the backyard at some point. He does take time in March there to talk about putting a modular home on his property, and I think we all kind of figured that one out, why he was wanting to do that. But maybe this was his way of also killing two birds with one stone. He was going to cover up the deaths of those children with a concrete slab, and at the same time, he'd have his own place. For some reason, Chad Daybell did not want to go back to that house and stay there. Was it because his kids were there all that time? And or maybe he sure as hell wasn't no conscience. So it's just really strange to me that he asked the Gilberts to move in. But then it really got more strange when he asked if they would put the bond up to get Lori, to bail Lori out. Where the hell? Where is the money? Where is Tammy's blood money? Why can't he use some of that money to bond his hooker out, Donna Donald says Chad had a change of plans at some point. Good morning, Jennifer Esslinger. Willis Knott says Lori out yet. No, Lori's never getting out, Willis. Lori's going to be in prison in Idaho the rest of her days. She's sitting in Arizona right now, awaiting conspiracy to commit murder charges there against Charles Vallow and attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux. Maria P. says that cheap bastard didn't spend on anyone but himself. Oh, yeah, well, I guess it would really be awesome, would it not, y'all, if they had surveillance video over there at the freaking Hobby Lobby. Who was paying for what? Didn't Chad tell the Gilberts? Oh, she's got a lot of money. I guess what, $4,000 to $6,000 a month she told Chad she was going to get? Hell, that's good money, y'all. She ain't no wealthy woman, but if it wasn't for those kids, she wouldn't have 2 pennies to rub against. They do have cameras at every Hobby Lobby, says Saltina. Donna Donald says, pretty vain people so seldom end up in Orange. It is a sight. Yeah, Jennifer Esslinger, there has been an influx of murderers to our great state of Idaho. And let me just be clear, there are a lot of really wonderful people that live in Idaho. Hello, KKB, how are you? So anyway, back to what we were talking about with Alice and Todd Gilbert there. When he asked them for that money to get Lori out and everything, they said they'd have to think about it. Again, this goes back to how many people are going to ask not only to move in with you, but also, hey, put your house up. Chad would have had to believe that the Gilberts saw some value, not only in their friendship, but that somehow Lori needed to be saved from jail, that she's being falsely accused and all that. That had to have been the conversation. But it was never bared out in Lori's trial about, say for instance, Alice Gilbert saying, well, when Chad came to us to ask for the bail money, he told us that, she's being falsely accused or anything like that. It was never said. And yes, they can say what Chad said. That's not hearsay. He was part of the conspiracy. Yes, they could talk about that. So then we get to this crucial moment that I think the jurors probably sat up in their seat in Lori's trial. And again, let's remember that Alice and Todd Gilbert will be testifying in Chad's trial. Chad said when asked about Tylee and why he lied initially about her, because initially he lied to the Gilberts, or so their testimony is, that Tylee had died at some point. What's interesting about that is you would think if you've got someone in your house and you're meeting this woman for the first time and do you have any children and stuff? And she said, well, Chad says she used to have a daughter and all that. You would think that at that point, you would think that, you'd hear what happened or whatever. Now, some people say, well, KJ, if someone told me that, they had a daughter that passed, I wouldn't want to ask them how, but I'll tell you what, I would. I'd be like, oh, my sympathies. I'm so sorry. What happened? How old were they? None of that was ever said, but that's just me. Some people are different. I don't think I'm rude for asking that. That shows I have a genuine care. How many times has someone that we know said, my loved one passed away, and you're like, oh, what happened? Or, how old were they? Or something like that. That's just common sense. So he initially lies to them, but then after Lori gets arrested and all that, and the kids, where are the kids? Where are the kids? And where are the kids? Alice Gilbert says that Chad says that Tylee didn't like people and she didn't like me. And what freaked Alice out about that is she said it was past tense. Now, let's stop there. First of all, Alice knows at this point that the children are missing. They're gone. Nobody knows where they're at. She knows that Chad's hussy there is sitting in a jail cell. She knows Chad wants to move in with them and they have to say no. They know that he's asked them to put up their house. They didn't want to do it, but they were trying to be nice about it to say they would think about it. Chad was trying to pressure them. And so when he says this, her reaction on the stand is, he said it past tense. Well, she'd already been told before that Tylee had died at some point. And then she realizes that Tylee's still alive. And here he is confirming that Tylee is not around. And this also, y'all, we all knew it. We didn't have evidence of it, but I think all of us felt this in our heart, that Tylee did not like Chad Daybell at all. And I guarantee you, the testimony about Chad taking JJ upstairs and JJ scratching him and stuff, after Tylee had died, if Tylee had been alive, she wouldn't have allowed it. That's my opinion. So, knowing what these people knew, the testimony also was said that when Alice and Todd asked Chad about Tylee, and Alice says that Tylee deserved to grow up and have her own car and have her own friends and stuff, and Chad makes that statement. Does that make sense? That she would say that? It's a wonderful thing to say. Alice Gilbert said, Tylee deserved all this. Well, how does that line up? Does it make sense to me that she made that statement to him and he says, she didn't like me, she didn't like people? It doesn't seem, the way that they are testifying, it's like they're leaving out stuff, because I just don't see how you get from point A of why did you tell us that Tylee was already dead, but now we found out through police and the media that the children are missing. And then he said, and then Alice just out of nowhere, it's almost like she's telling Chad, we know you killed her, right? If that's really, that's the only inference I can get. That she deserved to grow up. She deserved to, that sounds like Tylee's dead. And Chad, she should have been able to grow up and have a car and friends. And he tells them, y'all, it's incriminating as shit. That she didn't like people and she didn't like me. So at that point, the Gilberts know. They absolutely know. How long after that specific conversation were they on the phone to the police? Madam August Butterfly says of Tylee, she should have been able to grow up indeed. Rest in peace, Tylee. Right, Maria P. Alice should have called the cops then and there, and maybe she did. maybe they were gathering all of the, they had all these different law enforcement agencies working together. Some of them were in Arizona, some of them were in Idaho. They had a big meeting up there at Utah at one point, and the authorities in Hawaii, and yada, yada, yada. Good morning, Sandra Lavalle. JJ did not like Chad Daybell. I agree with you. Yeah, JJ didn't like Chad. Tylee didn't like Chad. Do y'all think that if Tylee not JJ, but do you think if Tylee would have just went along after knowing what she knew happened to Charles Vallow, if Tylee had been right on board with Lori and Chad and Alex and Zulema and Melanie Gibb and Audrey Bartero and all that Tylee would still be alive today? I doubt it. Lori did not want to parent anymore, and she didn't want to wait until Tylee became an adult. Because guess what? The only thing she saw, she didn't see that as a milestone for Tylee. She saw that as the spigot was going to be turned off on the money that Lori would get. Donna Donald says, nobody liked Chad, only flirty girls that wanted to marry a prophet. Roxy says, it's been years and my heart still hurts over these children. Liza Joe says, Chad acts like all the other male priesthood zombies. Dee Sunshine says, I believe Lori killed Joe Ryan too. Madam August Butterfly says, I think Tylee has had to argue and fight. She was put in a horrible situation by sick people. Yes, Fix Text. The interview with Lori and Tylee after Charles' death. We all saw it. Clear as crystal. Tylee was the big person in the room. Tylee was trying to protect her mother. So when it comes to the Gilberts, I think they did good testifying, but I think also that even though Lori got convicted, I am positive, y'all, that these jurors were like, you go from talking about this and then your answers to Chad or Chad's answers to you, it's almost like they don't line up. Y'all, this whole case has not made sense in so many ways. And I really believe, y'all, this has to do with protecting these people's religious beliefs. I'm not talking about these crazy-ass cult beliefs. I'm talking about, there are things that the state is trying to steer clear of because there is no other answer to that. Because when it comes down to it, whenever this is just what I see. Whenever a prosecuting team is putting witnesses on the stand, they know what it is that they want said to the jurors. And they've got to maneuver their way through that in order, number one, to keep the defense from pouncing on something because the state's opened the door. But it's another thing to it's almost like to steer it. To steer the ship of that case to get exactly what they want out of those direct examinations. BB says Tylee could have graduated college by now and starting her life, and JJ was robbed of a childhood of laughter and snuggles. Harry Poppins, I am talking about the Chad and Lori Daybell case. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Fake reverence, says Liza Joe. Strategy galore, says Madam August Butterfly. So now I'm going to wrap it up because I want to read word for word Samantha Williams' victim impact statement with the only lens that I'm looking through on how is this relatable to Chad's trial, in that she explains the dynamic and all the things that she knew during the time right before her sister was murdered, after she found out that her sister was murdered, and how Chad was behaving. If he really believed that his wife died of natural causes, then through Samantha Williams' testimony, along with her victim impact statement, it shows other guilty aspects of Chad Daybell, really. So I'm going to read this, and let me be clear. Samantha Williams sat down at some point, whether it was right before Lori's trial, months or years before Lori got put on trial, and she wrote down this victim impact statement. That doesn't get past me. Her words are her words, and she deserves respect in her words. So if I'm seeing something other than what she's saying, it's not her. It's me that sees this. And it's just hypothesis and theory. So I honor and respect Samantha Williams. I believe her victim impact statement said so much, not only in honor of her sister Tammy, but the fact that she absolutely fills in the blanks in a lot of areas about how Chad was acting. Just as the Gilberts gave testimony about how Chad was behaving. So here it goes, y'all. This is my statement. Over the last few years, I've often thought about what I would say to you, Lori. I often thought about what my sister would have said too. And this is important because, in my view, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the people in this religion, they get their own revelations, they get their own spiritual guidance, however they get it. And it's just my opinion. And I'm not attesting that Samantha meant it this way. I'm talking about me. That she wanted Lori to know that Samantha was going to be the voice of her dearly beloved sister Tammy. The minute I found out that Chad quickly remarried after the death of my most beloved sister Tammy, it confirmed what I had always felt. So she's getting a confirmation. What did she feel? You see, the minute I received the phone call that she had died, I knew that something happened to her, but I didn't know why I would feel that way. So when we were told by Chad that he had married you and it had happened 2 weeks after Tammy had been buried, my heart knew. I researched you like any true woman would to find out who you were. What did I find? Lies. Everything about you told to others is a lie. And then that moment, Thomas objects, which he can kiss my country ass. But again, she is letting Lori know the lies. She didn't know why she had this deep feeling inside of her. But then when she started researching the hooker there, she realized that this was all a big pile of lies. We asked what's her name? Lori Ryan. That was a lie. Now, somebody tell me why it is that Chad told the Gilberts that it was Lori Vallow, and yet Chad is telling Samantha Williams that it's Lori Ryan. So I searched about your previous husband. She told us he died of a heart attack. That's a lie. And the Gilberts heard the same thing. That Lori's her husband at the time, back in December of 2018, died of a heart attack. He died from being shot. I asked, are there children? I was told we will be empty nesters. That's a lie. Now, how is it, because we heard that about empty nesters, right? Doesn't that, how do you, is that just, we're going to be empty nesters, but we're not going to explain to you how that is. And in Alice Gilbert and Todd Gilbert's testimony, they don't never say, wow, empty nesters, so you told us you had kids, but you didn't really go into it. It's almost like the Gilberts, if they're testimony is truthful. They didn't pry. They didn't want to know. Or did they? The police asks us about missing children. You answer, the children aren't missing. They are safe and happy and alive. So here it is, y'all. Samantha William is telling Lori that Lori told her or told her family or whatever that the children were alive and they were happy. So it wasn't just Lori telling Melanie Gibb or anyone else that the children were happy and safe. Samantha William was told, either through Chad or Lori. She says it right here. She says, the police ask us about missing children. You answer, she's talking to Lori. The children aren't missing. They're safe and happy. That's a lie. Your children, your poor children, were dead and buried on Chad's property. And my sister was told was sick and her health was failing. That was a lie. I seen her with my own eyes 2 weeks prior. She was very healthy. We had to go through her being disinterred and an autopsy done. Was glad that we could get some answers and truth after so many lies. Now, how long before Tammy, remember y'all, remember how back when we found out that that Tammy had done an autopsy, but none of the results had been released. And it was before the Chad's children went on 48 hours to say, we've been told that it was asphyxiation, and how we all kind of surmised about that and said, well, they wouldn't go on TV and tell people that unless they had the answers. And how long did Tammy and her family have to wait for those answers? But to find out what we all knew in our hearts all along, she had been murdered by those who saw her as an obstacle to a plan to murder just much as you planned the murders of your own children and your previous husband. So she says she knew it all along. At one point she says, I just didn't know why, but this goes back again that maybe this is recollection. Maybe it makes sense now that she's gotten more information. Why? Why plan something so heinous? You had an affair with a married man. You lied to yourself that it was okay to sneak behind the backs of your spouses. Y'all, if this was some kind of divine thing between James and Elena, Raphael and Lily and stuff, why is it that they would have to kill them? I mean, why not just divorce them? And then, here we go. You're not exalted beings, says Tammy. Okay, this was really when I got really perked up in those moments, because Tammy really laid it down to her. And my thoughts on that is when she made that statement, you are not exalted beings, I had to think, wonder how Lori must have felt in that moment. You know, she probably thought, who are you? Who are you to tell me I'm an exalted being? You know how Lori always was. Your behavior makes you ineligible to be an exalted being, which she didn't say exalted being. She says your behavior makes you ineligible to be one. But why pick Chad? He was an average guy and you were married to several men before him. Now, this is interesting because I've gone back and forth on whether it was Chad that had designs on Lori. We know Lori had designs on Chad, but it's almost like Samantha's like, Lori, you're the one that made the decision to spread your legs and shake your boobs and do all that stuff to get Chad. You'd been married before and all that. He made you feel special and singled out. You tell yourself you were high spiritual beings who lived lives together through time. You felt powerful. This too is a lie. Chad has no real wealth. How will you live? You can easily have divorced your spouses and made your own perverted life together, but you need money. So you tell this story about people being dark and that they're zombies. This is how you justify who needs to be removed. You use this lie to justify the murders of 4 people whose deaths you profited from. You can sit there and think, you never met me and I don't know you, but I have always been able to tell when I'm being lied to. And you are a liar, an adulteress, and a murderer. Because of the choices you made, my family lost a beloved mother, sister, aunt, and daughter. She is irreplaceable. She was 1,000 times the woman than you will ever be. Dream of being. Because of the choices you made, we've been hounded by the media and those who revile in the salacious scandal that you've stirred up. Because of you and your desire to get what you want at any cost, my family has been ripped apart. I helped raise Tammy's children, and because of you, they no longer have their mother or grandmother. And because of fear of losing another parent, they listen to the lies by you and Chad. There you go. She is telling everyone in her victim impact statement that Chad and Lori, she's not just saying Chad and Lori's telling the kids all these lies. What is it that these children know, y'all? When they went to Knott's Berry Farm and all that, what was Chad and Lori saying to these kids? It's obvious that Tammy is saying the kids believe their father. She's not saying because of Chad's lies. She's saying you and Chad's lies. Our relationship is strained, she's talking about the children. And most contact with them is gone. Your trial was the last thing my Ellen mother had to live through. She declined in health when she heard news reports of horrible things that happened, and she had to relive it. All the things we have tried to forget in these last 4 years. My mother passed away in June, knowing that you will never come out of prison again. Her passing was marred by the fact that Tammy's children chose not to participate in her funeral because of fear of causing more drama. We were deprived of the chance to heal and have them realize how much we love them. We don't blame them for what happened. We blame you and Chad for all the lies you told in ripping apart this family. We didn't do anything. My parents are not evil. They did not deserve losing their grandchildren on top of losing their daughter. I did not deserve to lose the relationship to the children I helped raise, or my sister who was my dearest friend. I am not a dark person or a zombie. For me and my family to be portrayed that way is unacceptable. Lucky for me, the world can see the truth just as much as I can. Everyone now knows what liars you are. They now all know the horrible things you've done. You're going to have to live in your prison cell for the rest of your life. You're not an exalted being, and there's no huge event that's going to save you. No jail walls are going to fall so you can leave. No angels are coming to rescue you. You made judgments of others and determined whether they should die, based on the fact that they might do bad things and we needed to kill them before they do that. That is not how the atonement works. You cannot punish and judge others on things that haven't happened yet, but you did. You've also made choices that led you here. You've been judged by the court and you've been found guilty. Your consequences are before you. I miss my sister every day. I will grieve her and now the loss of my mother for the rest of my life. I will always remember them. As for you, I choose to forget you. And as I leave this courtroom today, I will never think of you again. Y'all, if that is not epic, I don't know what is. Those were true feelings. And this goes back to the Gilberts being neighbors and interacting with Chad. We see now the dynamic between the families during the time when all of this happened and Lori's arrested and Chad's arrested and the children of Chad and the family members, the extended family members. There hasn't been anything brought up about Chad's mother and father. I have a really strong feeling that Chad's family members, his extended family members, will testify. I do not believe that all the children of Chad's is going to testify. I think the state will probably home in on Emma and Garth. Who knows? The state needs credible witnesses. We know Chad Daybell's son Mark was in Africa on a mission there. He was removed from it. He didn't get to go to the funeral. At some point, Mark comes back. He's been removed from it. He would be more credible. Maybe his son Mark will be in that trial. Especially that oldest boy. He was doing most of the talking, him and the oldest daughter. I want to know why they lied and got away with it. Furthermore, I bet there's tension between the kids and the grandparents. Well, the bottom line is the state did not have to bring any of the extended family of Chad Daybell to Lori's trial. They did bring extended family members from Tammy's family, the victim's family members. So, because Tammy was murdered, and Tammy's mother is already passed, and Samantha Williams has taken up the mantle for her family, the only other option is that, Tammy's aunt also was in that situation. Could the father, because Samantha did read a statement on behalf of her mother and father as well. Would the father testify? Gina Vay says they're just evil, evil people. Hello, Juniper's Tarot and Astrology. Saltina Winchito says lying in public is legal. Lying while under oath is illegal. So, what is that? So, the public statements were lies, but it's not actually a crime unless they lie to police or in the court. Okay, well, there you go. I just realized they had those two older kids buying the whole Mommy's Turning Dark. That's why they said she was so sick the last few years. Which is interesting because you've got testimony from Tammy's church friend, this Alice Gilbert, who says, I just saw her. She actually saw her before, closer to her death than her own sister, Samantha. But the kids just all of a sudden are saying their mother was sick and all this other stuff. You got this, Alice is saying there was no coughing. She looked fine. You got Samantha saying she was fine. And most importantly, bottom line, y'all, the biggest hurdle in the Hussey's trial was whether a jury could see that Tammy was murdered. That was the biggest hurdle. Because I feel like the evidence was overwhelming in the deaths of the children and all that. They had to get over that hurdle of Tammy being murdered. And I guarantee you, when John Pryor was sitting in Lori's trial and it came back guilty and he realized that, yes, Lori's jury there thinks this was murder, how is it that John Pryor could think that, well, when we have our trial, I'm going to be able to poke holes in the scientific evidence or the coroner's report or this or that to try to poke holes in the whole question of was Tammy really murdered? Which we know she was, but he's got to put that seed of doubt at least one juror. And just because the jury saw through that in Lori's trial and believes that Tammy was murdered does not mean that another jury is going to think the same thing. And a lot hinges on that for Chad Daybell because we've discussed this before. If a jury didn't think Chad did anything to those kids, that it was Lori and Alex, he is charged with Tammy's murder. And that's enough for a death penalty right there. Just one murder. If you add the aggravating factors that we've all gone over before in Idaho statute and code, and it was aggravated. What is it, y'all? They murdered them for money. It was egregious. It was just all these other things. Hello, Vicky McNutt. Lori and Chad wanted to make it sound like they overdosed on ibuprofen or something, says Juniper. Good morning, Jodif, Texas. I hadn't heard from you in a while, Jodif. I swear to the day I die, she used Visine on Joe, Tammy, and Alex so that they didn't find it at the autopsy. Well, Eric, I don't know if you know, I'm sure you do, about that woman who was convicted of murdering that woman with Visine. Very interesting, is it not? So what all have I learned in looking back at Lori's trial, at some of these witnesses, along with a victim impact statement from a victim's family member about Chad Daybell? Chad Daybell came back from Hawaii and was very busy. He was busy trying to raise money. And he, you know what, y'all? He would have never been so busy wanting to get that hooker out of jail. But he knew that he needed to get her within his grasp, because he knew in his heart, well, what if she sits in there and decides to just come clean? Remember, Rob Wood said that Chad talked Lori out of speaking to the police. That was his motivation for getting Lori out of jail. I guess a side note being, he wanted some more of that poontang. He wanted to get between her legs some more. He wanted to run off with her. He wanted to do what he was going to do. But the bottom line is he was trying to raise that money so that he could keep her under his thumb with this belief system. This goes back to whether or not you believe Lori ran the ship, Chad ran the ship. Y'all, it all absolutely was even Steven to me. And so Chad had to get his hussy out of jail. He never could. What happened with all of Tammy's blood money? We know some of it was given to his children. We know some was spent on their stupid ass honeymoon. And I'm sure, you know, they ate out at nice restaurants. And we saw a picture of them in a grocery store in Hawaii with Lori lovingly leaning on the cart as her children are laying in a grave behind Chad's house there. And just as Samantha Williams says, Chad Daybell had no income. He had a little bit from his stupid books, but their future plans to write a book, why isn't he telling the Gilberts? Well, this is our future plan, as Chad is sitting on the couch, rubbing on Lori's leg, meeting the Gilberts there. Our plan is we've got to go to a place of safety. The end of the world is going to happen, and we're in the middle. We've got a mission. It's to kill all these zombies. This woman right here, Todd and Alice, she is the warrior beyond the millennia. She is James's woman, Elena. She's Raphael's woman, Lily. She's a role-playing sex worker for me. I enjoy it. I've never felt this way. Alice and Todd said it. Chad never acted this way before. Hello, Stephanie Willow. Eric says, I still remember how my stomach flipped when Nate was in that chopper over Chen's property, y'all. Can you imagine what could have been running through Tammy's family's mind and all this? It confirms in her victim impact statement that they were given a lot of answers by police, and they had to keep that stuff quiet. And then you almost can picture the Gilberts sitting in their living room after Chad's arrest, when the bodies were found on his property. They're sitting in their living room trying to add all this back together. These shoulda, coulda, wouldas. That's right, Cindy Bullen. Chen was sitting in his car across the street. You know, all of it could have been avoided if he had just gotten a divorce during his midlife crisis instead of choosing to kill his wife and his girlfriend's kids. There you go, y'all. Common sense. As KJ goes on and on, blabbing my mouth like I always do, leave it to one of y'all to kind of put it in a nutshell. Thank you, Saltino Wincino. Eric says, I remember these cops standing there. My wife said, babe, I think they found those kids. Y'all, it was devastating. And I truly believe when Kresha talked about last night on Difficult Research, when she talked about something draws us, it's always been for me and my definition of justice through understanding. I wanted to see this for myself. This will never happen again. And in order for any of us to, we've got all these memories of everything that's happened up to this point. And the only thing that keeps me moving forward is my love for the victims' family members, the memory of the victims, and along with all the beautiful friendships and love that we've had in Kresha's community, this community. It's really all just all of us together. And I'm just so thankful something good has happened out of it. It cannot just be that someone gets convicted and sent off to prison. And there you go. You can feel better about what happened. No, it's got to be more than that. For the memory of those victims. For the love of this family these families that were devastated from what Chad and Lori and the rest of their little freaked out cult did. Jennifer, that was my initial thing. I really thought no one wants to go there. Nobody wants to think something bad happened to the kids. And some of the rays that's been on from day one, they know. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I wanted to believe that somehow they were going to show up. And this was all about Lori trying to, say the government has no right to my kids and all that. I thought that's what was going to happen, but it didn't turn out that way. It was the worst nightmare for these family members of these victims. The worst case scenario. There could not have been anything worse that could have happened to these families, in my view. Laura, we're just throwing around stuff, trying to think about the activities of what Chad Daybell was doing. If the testimony has come out in Lori's trial through Alice and Todd Gilbert, which were friends of Chad's, along with what Samantha Williams, the sister-in-law of Chad Daybell, and really narrowly we're focusing on Tammy's murder. If that came out, and I'm sure more did because it's not exhaustive in my view. I mean, I'm sure some of y'all can think of some things that was in Samantha Williams' victim impact statement that triggers something, an acknowledgement of some kind of fact for you. The bottom line is if it was in Lori's trial, it'll be in Chad's trial. And I do believe there is going to be even more detail brought out with the communication efforts of Chad and Alex Cox, along with Chad's extended family, his at least 2 of his children, if not 3. Mark was in Africa. Chad's son was on a mission. He was removed from all of that. He could come in and really, through his eyes, see things differently. And we don't know, y'all. We don't know where those children stand now, Chad's children. They've seen Lori's trial. And they can blame the hussy all they want. I would if I were in their shoes. But I would not be blind or in denial about my own father's involvement in things, especially knowing what was said in the text messages, their movements, the way that they did things. I mean, these kids were brought breakfast from McDonald's from the Gilberts the morning they found out that their mother was dead. They got to hear these people that were loving to the children there. They got to hear them on the stand at the Hooker's trial. And in a nutshell, in terms of the Gilberts talking about the way the children were over when they came over that morning after Tammy was pronounced dead or whatever, they said the children looked so shocked. They weren't talking. So this whole idea that somehow Chad had groomed his wife into believing she was going to have to die and that the children knew that their mother was going to die. I don't believe that at all. Some people believe otherwise, but from the Gilberts' testimony, they say that Chad didn't really, he like turned his back to the children. And here's one I want to leave y'all with. Something ultimately, okay? When you look at the facts of that morning, when those Gilbert people came over to Chad's to comfort them, Chad told them we're going to have the funeral on Tuesday and the memorial on Wednesday. And this was on a Saturday. Okay, so let's stop and think about that. How long does it take to get a funeral put together? And Alice Gilbert said in her testimony, she said these exact words, which has stuck with me. She said, where is it? I can't. She said, it's almost like you could tell the state wanted the jurors to know that this was so quick. And Alice Gilbert says in her testimony, she says, but I know that this had already been planned. Not the murder, but the funeral and the memorial service. So this is something I'm throwing out here. I believe the state will actually have proof. You know how Chad called the funeral home for Lori back when Charles? I think they're going to show that Chad had made these arrangements ahead of time. Maybe within weeks. Not like something, because Alice Gilbert says, well, you know how when you're married, you say to your spouse, well, if I die before you, I want a gravesite service. You talk about these things. She said she already felt like that he already had that taken care of. If you just play it out, he would have to at some point on Saturday or Sunday call the funeral people. If this is a graveside service, he's got to get a place to have the memorial and all of that. He has not gotten Tammy's insurance money yet. He had to lay low with Lori for 8 to 10 days before he was able to get his monies on the blood money on that. So this whole idea of a funeral and memorial service being so quick, I'm just throwing it out there. I believe the state will have evidence that he already had planned it. That it was already in the works. He'd already talked to somebody. He was already had the memorial, going to have the memorial, the funeral. So that's just something I thought that y'all should kind of chew on that. Because when she does say, go back and listen to her testimony on direct examination. She does say that I know that he pre-planned it. Let me see if I can find it. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm just scattered brain this morning. Here it is. Here it is right here, y'all. October 19th, that Saturday that Tammy died, Chad says, we think she died of an embolism, and he said her legs were hanging over the bed and that she fell out of the bed and that she got up at the midnight and vomited. Alice Gilbert says she keeps stressing on the stand that more than once the kids seemed shocked and didn't speak. They were too stunned to talk, says Alice Gilbert. The funeral was going to be on Tuesday and the memorial on Wednesday. And she says, I was surprised and asked him. Alice Gilbert says on the stand, I asked Chad Daybell, did you plan this? That was the morning that they came over the house, the morning of Tammy's death. And he said no, he did not. He did not plan this. Well, if he did not plan this, then there should not be any record at all of him talking to anyone beforehand. Saturday morning, when everyone's shocked and about Tammy, how long was it before he got on the phone to people about the funeral and the memorial service? Yeah, I understand. If someone dies suddenly or whatever, how is it really supposed to be? But I just believe that he already had this all planned out. I just do. Definitely. When my mother passed away, my dad was surprised. She had the life insurance that she had. It was the last thing he wanted. It meant his partner was no longer here, says BB. Well, Chad had to get her in the ground, Eric. Chad wasn't going to wait for his son to come back from a mission. Chad absolutely wanted he just wanted to, that's how much he cared about that woman of almost 30 years. He didn't give a shit. All he cared about was crawling between that damn hooker's legs. You know it and I know it. Hi, YouTube, Canez. I'm doing fine. How are you? You doing okay? Dee Dee Sunshine, are you talking about your mom? Or are you talking about Tammy? Because I think Tammy was 48 or 49. 49, I think. You know, Chad couldn't let her live past 50. You see, Chad been telling people all this time he could see beyond the veil and all that crap. The only thing that he could say, see, I saw Tammy die before 50. Y'all, how lazy is that? Everybody's going to die. And by the way, well, KJ, he said it was before she was going to turn 50. Well, if she would have actually died of natural causes, that would have been something neat. But we all know he murdered her ass before she was 50. So he could go on to say, see, I had seen this beyond the veil. Saltina Wichito says, my brother-in-law went into a coma and died suddenly at 28. We had to call 6 different funeral homes before we found one to get his body from the hospital in a different city. Great point. What I'm saying is that if you'll go back and listen to Alice Gilbert talk about that, the state is extracting that information from her, and she does say, absolutely, she says, did you plan this? Chad said no, and then she adds in her testimony, she's like, but I knew he planned it. Was she saying I knew he planned it because I think he murdered his wife? Or is she saying I think he planned it because I just had this revelation? Or I think he planned it because somehow there's this information out here that says that Chad did get in touch with people in the funeral home or to get the memorial building or wherever they were going to have their service? So anyway, that's just something to chew on. I love you guys. I hope y'all have a great Monday. I don't know exactly what, KJ just puts it out here, however discombobulated it is, so that it will trigger, not bad trigger, and it might trigger something in your journey to get justice to understanding. Maybe it's something I say that leads you somewhere else where you may find answers. Just thought it's interesting. Very interesting that Chad Daybell was so active. And up until the day they handcuffed his ass, which, by the way, that is testimony in and of itself, y'all, that I am positive. I forgot, is it Emma that was there when they handcuffed Chad down the road from his house when they found the children? What did Chad Daybell say? And on top of it all, what about the body cam? What was Chad doing? Was he just hanging his head down, not saying anything? What did Emma say to Chad? What did she say to her father? A lot of things we're going to find out, y'all. You'll see. I love you all. Have a great Monday. We'll get back together again soon. And keep on looking.